Whether you've had a Rep Fitness Aries 2.0 delivered to your house, you're thinking about getting one delivered to your house, or you're just kind of shopping around, one of the biggest questions people have is how in the heck am I going to put this thing together? So, since I just had one delivered, I figured that I'd take you guys along for the ride and show you step by step how to assemble an Aries 2.0. Welcome back to the GymCrafter YouTube channel, everybody. My name is Tim. I am the head gym nerd here at GymCrafter.com, the website that I built to help ordinary folks like you and I build home and garage gyms that we absolutely love. And one of the things people don't absolutely love is putting stuff together. So this video is to help you guys out. So like I said in the intro, if you're thinking about buying an Aries 2.0 or you've bought an Aries 2.0, this is going to be the video to help you get the thing together. The Aries 2.0 variety or version that I'm going to assemble here on this video is the wall-mounted version. So for those of you wondering about this new wall-mounted version, you're going to see that. But the Aries itself is the same no matter whether you wall-mounted or it's freestanding. So the Aries that I have is just a standard 4-post Aries 2.0. The assembly that we're going to go through is going to be applicable to anybody with an Aries, whether it's a 4-post, a 6-post, a wall mount. You're going to be able to get most of the gist of putting it together from this video. So with all of that said, let me grab some tools. We're going to hit the step by step. The instructions that come with it, you have either in the manual itself, and it comes in one of the bigger boxes that says actual Aries wall mount on it or Aries 2.0 on it, or you can get them online, whatever works better for you. And then I'm going to tell you the tools that you'll need as we use them in each step. Let's get started with step number one. And for step number one, you're going to need this big old assembly here. This is the base of the Aries. It's got these pulleys on the back. It's got the post for the foot plate for your low row. And we're going to be working on the back of it for this particular step. You're also going to need this particular plate. Now, as far as the parts go, I've got a tip for you. All of the parts are going to be labeled on the boxes that they're in. So you're going to have part numbers on the front. Normally, I would say, you know, with a lot of machines that I put these together a lot, you want to lay out all the parts and bump them against the owner's manual. With the Rep one, what I would do with this is I would unpack all of your small boxes and lay them out so you can see the part numbers, but I would leave all the parts in the boxes until you get to the step that requires that part. That way you make sure you're not missing anything or losing anything like that. The second thing is that while this is going to come with some very nice Rep branded wrenches and you are going to need to use these, I would also recommend, if you have access, get yourself a socket wrench. These things, I've put enough of this stuff together to be able to tell you for sure, these things are going to save you a lot of skin on your knuckles. For step one, we're going to put this little plate on here, and the couple of things you want orientation wise is you want the bump down section towards the bottom, and you want these little raised nuts that are bolted on the outside or welded on the outside to face out from the unit here. We're going to take and put this on both of these bolts here, and what you're going to do is you're going to leave the washers on the bolts, so the washer is going to be between the plate and the unit itself, and then what we're going to do is we're going to hand tighten these nuts onto these bolts. Some steps are going to require us to hand tighten stuff. Some steps are going to require us to tighten things down. It's important that you pay attention to that. If you tighten something down too soon, other parts won't go together and so forth. So this particular step, we're going to hand tighten, and then we are going to move on to step two. In this next step, you're going to be connecting two of your uprights to the base that we were just working on. The uprights that you're going to use are the taller of the uprights. If you're doing the wall-mounted storage unit, you're going to have some storage uprights. Don't use those. Use the main uprights. They're going to have feet on them that look like this, that stick off of one side. So you're going to line these up so that the feet stick out to the side of this particular unit, and you're going to get 4 of these M24 by 120 millimeter bolts. These are these giant guys. Now, to connect these, to work on these, you're going to need a really large crescent wrench or a couple, and then for me, the socket I'm using is a 36 millimeter socket. This is not a socket you'll normally find in a set, so you may have to go buy this special, but again, comes in a lot of handy. So 2 of these bolts are going to screw through the bottom hole and into a threaded insert here, and then 2 of the bolts are going to screw through a hole and through this flange right here. So I want to kind of give you a heads up on how these bolts are always going to attach. On the bolt, you're going to see 4 things. You're going to see a washer, a lock washer, which is the split one, and then you're going to see the nut itself. This is how these are always going to go on. So when we put these on things, what's always going to happen is you're going to put the bolt through whatever you're connecting it to. So in this case, through the outside of the upright, You're going to leave one washer on the outside, then you're going to put another washer on, then you're going to put the lock washer on, and then you're going to put the nut on. And that's always how it's going to go. So I don't want to repeat that every step, but every time we use these large bolts, that's the order of the hardware that's going to go on. And so let's get this, and we're going to do this on both sides. So again, we're going to take one of these bolts. We're not going to use anything except for a single washer, and it's going to screw directly into the threaded insert in the bottom. The second one is going to attach just how I showed you, and you're going to do that on both sides. So basically we've got this base attached to two uprights. For this next step, I'm going to recommend something just slightly different than the owner's manual says to do. In the instruction book, it tells you to leave everything where we put it, and then to take this header bracket and lay it over the top of the uprights, and then put these bolts in from the bottom and screw them in. The way that these go in is these are going to go through the upright into threaded inserts into this header bracket. This header bracket is what's going to attach to your wall. The issue that you have is, because this is kind of big and heavy, trying to balance this on top facing down and then get these things underneath and screwed in turned out to be a lot harder than it was worth. It turns out it's much easier to just flip the whole assembly over for now, slide this header bracket underneath, and then just take these bolts and screw them straight in. These bolts are going to go through the top hole and the fourth hole on each side. They're going to attach this header bracket to the piece. Now, once we're done, you're going to want to flip it back over. So right now, the way this sits, if I look down here at the bottom, the pulleys are actually facing up, whereas when we first put this together, they were facing down. So hopefully that gives you some sense of orientation here. If you look in the owner's manual, it's very good. So it'll show you the orientation, but like I said, just to make things easier, I would recommend flipping it over, sliding this underneath, and then bolting these in through the top. And then you can just go ahead and flip it over again, because the next step is we're going to put this up against the wall and mark where we're going to drill into the wall. So that's where we are right now. Let me get these four in and we'll get on to the next step. This is the part in the video where I tell you that while I'm putting this together and assembling it by myself, you should not. This is a two-person job, especially this portion. This is where we're going to be securing the wall-mounted stringer up here to the wall. So here's what we've done. I've flipped this back around and I've put it up against the wall in the spot where I want it. I know that this is on my wall where I want it. It may not be able to stay here, but I'm going to start here. Then what I'm going to do is you're going to take a stud finder and you're going to find where the studs are and see how they line up with the different holes in this header piece. In the instructions, it's going to tell you how many of these lag bolts you need based on the spacing of your studs. The short version is you're going to want to get at least 3 studs, so 6 of these bolts, 3 top and 3 bottom, and if you can, based on the spacing, 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark where these are in relation to the studs with the stud finder, make sure that this is in a position where I can hit those. I'm then going to mark through here where I want to drill the holes in the studs and sink these, and I'm going to lay this back down on the ground. Then I'm going to drill the holes. I'm going to remove this stringer from these uprights, and then I'm going to use these bolts with these little spacers. You basically put the spacer in and then put the bolt through the spacer and screw it into the stud. And I'm going to attach just the header to the wall. So again, I'm going to mark the spots, pull this whole thing down, drill the holes, remove this header from these posts, mount it to the wall in the spot that I've marked, and then get on to the next step. Now that this is up on the wall, I've got a couple of tips for you putting it up here because it was a little bit of a pain. So first of all, this is definitely a two-person job. I did it with one, but trust me, if you can get two, get two. Secondly, when you're putting this up on the wall, these little silver grommets that go into these kind of oval holes that the bolts are going to go through, they don't like to go in because of the thickness of the powder coat here. Great powder coat. The problem is it's very thick, so they don't want to go through the holes. I actually had to take a rubber mallet and tap them through the hole, which caused a couple of problems. Number one, just kind of a pain to put them through. Number two, what you should be able to do is put these up and then slide this back and forth to get it in the exact right spot. Unfortunately, because these are going to be super tight in these holes, you're not going to be able to do that. So you're going to want to actually put this up and figure out. What I did was I just did the top 2 corners, figure out exactly where those are going to be, tap those in, put those screws into the wall, and then that will allow you to then go back up with each grommet and tap it in directly over the hole that the screw is going to go in. Other than that, it went up nicely. The next step is going to be to assemble more of the rack itself, and then we're going to eventually lean that whole entire assembly up and attach it to these 2 attachment points up here where it was originally attached to start with. So let's get to those steps. So this next step is going to be slightly different depending on the configuration that you have. If you have the storage wings that go on the side like I do, you can follow along with mine. Otherwise, I'm going to show you what's different right now in this next step. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take this assembly that we put together and we're going to put it up against the wall as close to the center of the plate up above as we can, so that eventually once we get all of this assembled, we can lever it up against the wall. This is going to be very heavy when we put it up against the wall, so we don't want to have to move it left and right any more than we have to. So try and get it as close to the right position as possible. Now, if you don't have the storage wings, you're going to leave the bottom attached like it was, and then up here, you're going to take this, this little top pulley bracket and going to assemble it with this portion facing down. So the part that's facing down is going to be the front that's facing out from the wall. So that's the direction you want that. If you notice, I put some boxes underneath the uprights, and the reason for that is that because these pulleys are facing down both here and at the bottom, it's kind of wobbly and wonky, and it makes it hard to get the bolts through the holes correctly. So if you just take a few of your parts boxes and prop everything up, you're going to find it a whole lot easier to get the bolts in and threaded. The next thing is I'm going to point out is some of these parts that already have like a threaded nut welded on have some powder coat inside the nut. So you're going to find that you're going to be going just fine, and then it's going to hit some of that powder coat. It's going to get a little sticky. You want to make sure you're not cross-threading any of your nuts, so make sure that they go in good to start with. But if you know that it's in and it's threaded right and you just hit a sticky spot, take a peek inside the threading to see if there's any powder coat in there. I found that on a couple of mine, it really got stuck pretty badly, so it was a little bit of an effort to get everything threaded in and set right. Now, for those of you who have the side storage wings like I do, you have some extra steps here. So what we're going to do is I have actually unscrewed the bottom portion and unscrewed the top. So nothing here is connected together anymore. I have the two uprights laid out. I have the bottom portion stored there. I have the top portion set up here. What we're doing is instead of bolting through the side with bolts, we're adding the storage pieces. So up here on the top, you've got these little wings that are going to go up on the top here, one on each side, and you're going to bolt those through the upright and then into this top trolley carriage up here. And then at the bottom, we've got these little extenders that are going to attach to the storage posts, and this part is going to go through. Now on the bottom here, this peg right here is going to go up towards the top, and then this flange right here is going to go down towards the bottom. You'll see in the image, again, the owner's manual, the instruction manual is pretty good, so you'll be able to see the orientation, but make sure you put these on right side up, and then these are going to go through and then get bolted through, so that instead of just a square piece, we're going to have the square piece with the two top wings and the two bottom wings sticking out. So let me get this all bolted together and squared up, and we'll get to the next step. Now that you've got this back frame together, remember if you're doing the side storage wings, you'll have these attached at the top and also little wings at the bottom. If you're not doing the side storage wings, it's just going to be this rectangular frame. You're going to put it back up against the wall, get the feet in position, and then get this top portion lined up against the plate. You're going to take some bolts and put them through the top holes on each side. Just hand tighten them. All these bolts are doing right now is they're holding this against the wall securely so it doesn't fall on top of you. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to actually take two of your short cross members here. Now the cross members have numbers across the top of them, so there is a bottom and a top hole. And what you're going to do next is you're going to take another set of these bolts. You're going to take and put them through the fourth hole. So through the fourth hole, into the back plate, and you're going to screw those down, not all the way because you need these to be able to move around, and you're going to do that on both sides. Once these are secured in, and again, now you have these bottom bolts holding this up against the wall, you're going to undo the top bolts, flip these up, and then secure the top bolts through the top, and then tighten both bolts down through each of the uprights on top. So that'll get this unit secured against the wall, and then get your top two cross members attached to the top. Now, one heads up for you, this is where you find out how exact you were in lining up the plate up here to the wall in the right place. What you might notice is that when you put this up, you might have a little bit of a slight misalignment if you didn't get it exact. Now you can loosen these screws into the wall. You'll have maybe 1/8 of an inch of play to really kind of force this thing around, but if it doesn't line up pretty much exactly, you're not going to be able to get these bolts through. So if you're watching this video through before you actually assemble it, really double and triple check the measurements of this plate up here when you put it up against the wall, and make sure that it's screwed in exactly the right place. Otherwise, these won't line up and you're gonna have a heck of a time with this step. But let me get these cross members on, and then what we're gonna do after this is we're gonna go and put two more of these on the bottom. Now we're gonna go ahead and put the bottom cross members on, and you're gonna use your normal setup of the bolt, the nut, the couple of washers, and then the lock washer in the same order we talked about earlier in the video. These are gonna go, again, with the number side up, and then you're going to put them on the bottom set of holes, so one on the bottom here, and then another bolt through fourth up from the bottom. Tighten these completely down, and we'll move on to the next step. It's time to start making this thing look like a rack. So for the next step, we're gonna put the front uprights on, and a couple of orientation notes for this. Attaching it's gonna be pretty simple, but you want this so that the rep logo is on the sides and that the numbers are on the front. There's a foot on the bottom, and the foot needs to stick out to the outside of your rack. So that'll let you know that this is oriented in the right place. Before you bolt this on, this is also where your trolleys are gonna slide up and down. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take each trolley and slide it over the top of the upright, and there is a right and a left trolley. Now each box is labeled with right and left trolley, but in case you're not sure, the handle is gonna go on the outside with your pop pin here, and then your pulleys are gonna go towards the front with the top portion that sticks out further on the top. So you don't want it upside down so that that top portion is in the bottom, and then also the rep logo is going to be right side up as well. So it should be fairly easy to make sure these should go on the right side, but you don't want to put them on the wrong one, because put them on the wrong one, it's a pain in the butt to take them off and flip them. So with that said, let me go ahead and slide these on and get these front uprights attached. These basically attach the same way the rear ones do. There's 2 bolts at the top, 2 bolts at the bottom. You're going to use the same nuts, bolts, washers, and lock washers as you use on everything else. So let me pop these puppies on and we will get to the next step. This next step is pretty straightforward. You're going to put this big old header up here between the top 2 front uprights. They're going to go all the way at the top, so you're going to put a bolt through the top hole and then a bolt through the bottom, which is 5 down, and you're going to secure both. This is going to come with this little slim wrench, and you're going to need that because at the top there's a cross member and there's a cutout you'll see when you put it in, and you're going to be able to put this up through the cutout to hold on to the hardware while you tighten the bolt from the outside. So again, bolt through the top, bolt through the bottom edge of this, tighten all 4 all the way, and that should cover mounting the front nameplate bracket. If you don't have the storage wings in your particular unit, you can skip ahead to the next part. I've got all the chapter markers down below, but for those of you that do, the next thing we're going to do is put on these side pieces right here, and just a couple of orientation notes. Number 1, there is a clear foot and head. The head's got a plastic cap on it. The foot has kind of a flanged piece of metal, and then what you'll notice is up here, if you look on one side, there's these 2 holes are lower than these 2, which are higher, and you want the higher holes running left and right. So the higher hole is going to be up running this way into the unit. You're then going to take 2 bolts at the top and secure them in the top, and then at the bottom you're going to take your, if you bought them or if you've got them as part of your kit, there's 2 barbell storage, upright storage posts that will go on the outside. So it's going to go post, the storage piece, this post, and then the bracket there, and again you've got 2 bolts that run through. The picture in the owner's manual is pretty good, but that's what you're going to do for these, and let me get these popped on. Once you've got the barbell storage on either side, and make sure you go through and put in the other bolt that goes from the front to the back. It's another step in the manual you may miss if you don't look for it, but you're going to end up with a few bolts, and one of them goes through the front. After that, you're going to put 5 weight storage horns up and down this post here. Now this is a step I'm guessing you could probably leave till later if you're not sure of the spacing. In the manual, they have suggested spacing based on standard plate sizes, so that may help you select it. I'm going to go ahead and put it on in the suggested spacing now, and I'll move it later if I need to. The way those go is you're going to get 10 of these, 5 for each side. These are the posts. So this little bumper here is going to go on the post itself and slide all the way down to the base like that, and then you're going to put this end through the hole, and on the back you're going to put a washer and a bolt. Comes with a real nice wrench so that you can fit it back here in this tight space, so you'll be able to get it on. You won't need the tool to do that. And so let me grab these 10 posts and put them on, and we'll move on to the rest of the storage setup. Next, we're going to be putting on the pegboard storage on each of these wings, and they go on in a particular order. You're going to have a top, a bottom, and a middle panel for each side, and that's actually the order that you're going to want to put them in. So here I've got the top panel, and I kind of show you the side profile of what this looks like. You'll be able to see this in the owner's manual, but hopefully that gives you an idea. It goes in this particular orientation with the 2 tabs lower and this empty space up top. And these are going to go in with the same bolts that you assembled the rack, so those big, huge, giant ones. And so you put this one in the top first. Then after that, you're going to want to put the bottom one in. And the bottom one looks like this. It's got this little cutout in it down here, and again the cutout goes towards the bottom, so you'll see that in the manual, but this goes in the bottom. And then once that's in, you'll grab this long one And this longest one, which has kind of the even tabs on the top and bottom, will go in the middle. But 3 posts on each side, again, top, bottom, and then middle. And then you should have your storage wings all set up with the pegboard. We're done with the wall mount Aries installation at this point, and the instruction manual will tell you to now go to the Aries assembly book, which is this guy right here. And you're gonna skip to step 9 because we've actually done the first beginning part of this already as part of assembling all of this. So steps 9 and 10 are going to be installing these little pulley brackets down here. Make sure you refer to the part numbers in the manual. It'll tell you specifically what part. So if you've kept these in the boxes like I recommended early on, you'll be able to walk over and find the parts. If you didn't keep them in the boxes, you may have a little issue. But these guys are gonna go, there is a right and a left. And basically this one, as I'm looking at the rack, is on the left. So if you can see, the post is a little bit lower, and it's going to seat right into the lowest hole that it will fit in. And then since it's threaded, you're going to use a washer, a lock washer, and a nut to secure them on. And you'll get one on each side. There is a little bump out here that will insert into the hole above to keep this level and straight. So make sure that you get this seated into the hole and it's not crooked. And once we get those in, we'll move on to the next step. We're going to start putting together the pulley system now, and it's important that you pay a lot of attention to the right-hand parts and the left-hand parts. Everything's pretty clearly marked, but I want to make sure and emphasize in the video which goes on which side, because if you put something on the wrong side, it's going to be a real pain to fix and change later. So this next step, we're going to combine a bunch of the steps in the owner's manual into just this one here. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to find, this is a bag of like little grommets and things, and this is in the parts, one of the parts boxes. You're going to need 4 of these little grommet guys right here. And they're going to go 2 in the top and 2 in the bottom here. Definitely cross-reference this video with the owner's manual. It'll show you very clearly where these things go. But if you go 1 in from the back hole here, then you're going to put 2 in the top and then 2 underneath in the bottom. And that's going to be seated pretty snugly in there. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take this assembly. So it's the assembly that has just the L bracket on it. And you'll notice on the inside of the L bracket, there are 2 little nubs that's going to hold this in place. Now what you're going to find is if you try and put this in place here, it's going to hit this bolt down here. So what you're going to end up having to do before you put this in is you're going to have to unscrew this bolt that goes in the front here and holds this cross member in. And you're going to have to take it out and you're going to flip it around this way so just the head is over there, because otherwise it's sticking out too far for this to fit. And then you're going to go ahead and tighten this back down. Once that's flipped around, you're going to find that this then, you can go ahead and, again, you want to make sure you use the correct one. So as this is fitting in this way, the horizontal pulley is at the front and then the 2 diagonal vertical pulleys are towards the back. And you're going to slide this in so that those 2 little nubs seat into the holes there. That's going to tell you that it's in the right place. Then you're going to take this little guy right here, and this is another one that has a right and a left. So what you'll notice is in the packaging, there is some labels on these. So you're going to take the part number for the pulley, which is indicated in the owner's manual, and then you're going to look for whether it's the right or the left. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this and put it right over those so that it all kind of snugs up together. Now there are 2 holes in the bottom of this, and these are going to go over the grommet. So if you're not sure where this goes, these are going to go over those rubber grommets that you put in. And then once you have this in and all together, you're going to take one of the big bolts through the outside, and then again, same order of washer, lock washer, and nut. Tighten that all the way down, and then this side is done. Now, in the owner's manual, it's going to have you do the whole left side first, both the bottom and the top, and then it's going to have you do the right side. I would recommend doing them in that order, so that way you make sure you've got the correct stuff on each side. But we're going to go up to the top and do a similar assembly up here on the top. Coming up top on the left-hand side, there's a couple of overlapping pulley systems that go up here, and again, I'm going to keep saying this, make sure that you're paying attention to which is on the left and which is on the right. Now these in their bags were all labeled left and right, so you shouldn't have any issues, but just in case. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come up, and just like we did down below, we're going to put 4 grommets in this top cross member. You're going to go 1 out from the back, and then the next 2 have grommets in the top and grommets in the bottom. Make sure those are seated well. I didn't point this out down below, but make sure these are completely seated right, because you're putting things over them and you're not going to have a chance to adjust them once these parts are on. The next part we're going to do is this kind of bigger bracket right here. Now you've got 3 pulleys, 2 vertical and 1 horizontal. The horizontal one goes towards the front, and the mountain logo goes towards the inside of the rack. So we're going to set this over the top of this top cross member. There are 2 cutouts in the top that seat around those grommets. So that's another way you know you have this going the right way. So this now sits up here. We're then going to take this guy right here, which is a very similar piece with a U-shaped bracket and a pulley. The pulley is going to go towards the back, and we're going to put this up around the whole assembly. Now, we're going to take 2 bolts and we're going to put them through, and the holes that they're going to go through is, if you count 1 in, you're going to put 1 in there, so one's going to go straight through there, and then you've got another one that's going to go 1 in from the back. So there you go, you've got hole, bolt, 3 holes, bolt, hole, and that's the order they're going to go in. We're going to get these snugged up and tightened on the other side, and then we're going to move to the other side of the rack. So after we finish putting the pulley assemblies in the bottom and the top portion up here for the left-hand side, you're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the right-hand side. Because it's the same thing, just with different parts, the part specifically for the right, I'm not going to include that here on the video, but you're doing it in exactly the same way with the grommets and everything else. So just go ahead and do that on that side. Then once that's done, we're going to come up here and we're going to put these pulleys on the top of each corner. In order to put these pulleys in, this is also another part that has a right and a left. So make sure that you're looking, the bags are actually labeled. So this is the left one. I'm on the left-hand side of the rack. In order to put this on up here, I'm going to have to remove 2 of the bolts up here. The first one is the front one here that goes in the front of the rack. The other one is the side one here, which comes out of the side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put this on. So this part with the kind of downward tab here is going to go on the outside. So this is going to slide right in here. This bolt's going to go through that side. And this bolt is going to go through the front. And then you're going to go back and put the washers and lock washers and nuts back on. You're going to do that on the left side and the right side. Hey, we've got a step that doesn't have a right or a left part. We're actually putting on the central pulley bracket here. Now, if you have a different header, there's 2 types of headers. You could have this one, which you don't need to do anything to. Some of you just have a cross beam with a little rep nameplate. If you've got that, you'll have to take that nameplate off of here to make room for this. But basically, this is going to go with the pulleys here over the front. And you just put it all the way in the center, and then you're going to take a couple of these bolts and put them through the front to the back. So you want the bolt head in the front, but you don't want the longer portion of the bolt to be in the way of the pulley. So you put the 2 bolts through the front, go ahead and put your washers and your nut on the back, and you'll be done with the center part. In this next step, we're going to install the guide rods and the weight stack. I've already got one side in, so I want to kind of go over with you the order of things that go on the guide rods. It's a pretty easy assembly, but because there's so many weight plates that go on, you don't want to put them on in the wrong order and then have to take everything back off. So we're going to start with getting the guide rods into the holes in the bottom. They basically just sit in there. So there's not going to be anything that bolts them in down at the bottom. They're just going to sit in that, and they're going to lean forward away from the wall. They're going to lean forward enough for you to actually put things on top of them. The next thing that's going to go on is going to depend on which weight stack you have. Now, if you've got the shorter weight stack, the lighter weight stack, you're going to put this spacer on, and that's going to go on, and that's going to hold the weights up off of the ground a little bit because the cable is going to be the same length for both. If you have the heavier weight stack, which is what I have and what I'm going to be putting on here, you're going to put these guys, this little thin rubber spacer on, and this was in the same bag as those grommets we put on earlier. And you're basically going, so you're going to put the guide rods on, you're going to put one of these spacers on each of the guide rods, and then you're going to start loading the weight plates. If you've got the lighter weight stack, you're going to install 24 weight plates on each side. If you've got the heavier weight stack, you're going to install 29 weight plates on each side. The weight plates don't have a front or a back, so just put them on. One tip for you when you're putting them on, actually a couple. Number one, don't pinch your fingers. It's real easy to pinch your fingers between these weight plates. The other one is don't drop them on. The weight plates can crack if you drop them from the top, so lower them nicely down and then you can kind of let them settle in. But with that said, let me get the weight stack on here and then I'll show you the stack of parts that goes on top of that. Once you've got your 24 or 29 weight plates on, you're going to put this top guide rod in place. So there isn't a right or left one of these, you're just going to use one on each side. And what you are going to do though is there's a bolt head and then there's a nut. The nut goes facing the wall. You're just going to slide this onto the guide rods, and once that's on, that rests all the way at the bottom. The next piece you're going to put on is the fractional weight. Fractional weight looks like this. This is going to be the extra 5-pound weight that you can slide on and off in the docks at the top of these. The pull pin is going to go towards the front, and you're going to slide this on top of the guide rods down on top of the plate we just put on. Next, after the fractional plate, you're going to put these 2 silver collars with Allen set screws in there, and you're going to slide each one of those down. Just leave them loose for now. The next thing that you're going to install are these little rubber grommets. This was in the same bag as the other grommets and the rubber stoppers. These are the ones that are just kind of have a flange on one end and a thin end at the other end. You're going to put these on with the flange down. So we're going to put one on each of these. You don't need to slide them all the way down. Just slide it a little bit of the ways down. Once those are in place, you're going to put this little bracket on the top, and this is where the fractional plate's going to dock. This is also what's going to hold the top end of the guide rods in place. So because we didn't put these little grommets all the way down, this is just going to set on top there. The way that you want to put it and orient it is so that this tongue is facing forward. This little hole right here is where the fractional plate's going to clip in, the pull pin on that. So you want that facing forward. So we're going to set this on top of the guide rods, and then I'm going to come inside and show you how to connect it all up top. Now that we're in here, what we're going to do is we're going to slide this portion up to the top here, and this is going to connect. So there are some smaller holes that you'll see drilled in this cross member up here, and then above those there are some nuts that are welded to this cross member. So you're going to take these screws, they're little cap head screws. They're the only ones this size and shape that you get 4 of them. There's these little cap head screws with an 8mm hex in the end. You're going to take a lock washer and put it on first, and then the standard washer, and then you're going to push this up, and you're going to take these and kind of just thread them through. Now you should be able to hand tighten these at first to get them in place. Once you've got these hand tightened, they do give you a set of Allen wrenches. So take the 8mm Allen key, and you're going to kind of put these in. Now you're going to want to do this nice and tight. Those lock washers that are on there, so again, the bolt and then the lock washer and then the regular washer. So that lock washer is sandwiched between the bolt head and the washer itself. Those make it a little bit hard, and it can be a little bit difficult to get it all the way tight, but you want to make sure that it's there. So what I recommend is using the wrench this way first to get it as tight as you can, and then using the leverage of the wrench, put that up there, and then what you'll find is that you'll be able to get it a little bit tighter like that. And that way you know that it's snugged all the way up, and you're going to tighten both of these bolts as tight as you can. Once those bolts are snugged up there, you're going to take these grommets, you're going to push them all the way up. Now when you push them up, you'll notice that this rod might slide. So hold the rod with one hand and then push those up and seat these in the larger hole up above and get them snugged up as much as you can. You want them as far up as you can get them. And again, they're going to be seated into the hole in this bracket up here so that they fit. You don't want any extra room, and it takes a little bit of wiggling and a little bit of pushing all around the edges to get them all the way up. Once they're all the way up there, you're going to take these silver collars that we put on, and you're going to give it a good push. So I would give it a good push to make sure, again, it's up there. You take a 4mm Allen key, and you're going to tighten that on with this set screw in the front, and make sure that's nice and tight. And then you do that on both sides, and your assembly is set so that you can take this fractional weight and it docks right up there at the top like that, and then you can let it back down with no problem. And your guide rods and your weights are installed. It's time to start running the cables, and we're going to run the cables. You're going to get 4 cables with the unit, and you're going to run them one at a time. You're going to run 2 on one side and then 2 on the other side. I've already done the right side of my unit, so I'm going to walk you through so you can see on the left side what you're going to do. And you're going to start with the upper cable. The upper cable is going to be the one that's got this bolt on the end of it, and then it's got a ball and another little piece of hardware on there. So one tip for your cables, when you first take the cables out, they're going to be coiled. One thing that you're going to want to do that I find helpful when you're assembling cable machines is to take the cables and lay them out. So I've got mine laid out in my living room, and I just stretched them out and kind of just shook them a little bit. You want to get all of the twists out. One of the keys to a successful cable run is making sure that there are no twists. And you're going to see a bunch of times in here where we do a couple of things to make sure that there's no twists in the cable. When there's twists in the cable what happens is there's a floating pulley that we're going to install in here, and that pulley will start to turn and twist, and it'll cause friction and cause a little bit of less smoothness in your cable pull, and also wear the cables quicker. So it's real important to do that. So you're going to start by letting it relax like that, and then don't curl it up again. Just kind of pull it out loose, and you're going to find that you're going to get twists in your cable no matter what. But the better a job you can do at keeping those twists out of the cable, the better the cable is going to run. So we're going to start by taking the ball off of the end of this, because this is the end we're going to snake through all of the different spots. So what you do is you just unscrew this little end piece here and then pull it out of the U-clip, twist the U-clip and pop it off, and then screw it back together. So we're going to set this aside in a place that we can get to later, because we'll need this later on, but for now you don't need this particular piece. The next thing is I want to go over what you're going to need for this particular step. This is an area where the manual, as good as it is, this cable run gets a little bit tricky as far as what it has perspective and seeing things in the right way. Also, it misses a couple of things that you're going to need to put the thing in. So for this step, for the upper cable, you're going to need one of these floating pulleys. There isn't a right or a left, although there is a top and a bottom, which I'll show you when we install it. So it's got 2 pulleys top and 2 pulleys bottom, so you're going to need this. You're going to need one of the free pulleys that are just out, and then you're going to need an M10 by 45 bolt. Now there's M10 45s and M10 50s. You want the 45 for this particular one. 2 washers and then a lock nut to go on top of it. This is what's going to secure that pulley when we get to that particular point. So set those aside, you'll need those. It's also very helpful to have 2 people. Doing this with just one person is a little bit tricky. I'm going to do it with one person so to show you here, but if you've got a second person that can help you keep tension on the cable, it'll make things a whole lot easier. But let's get this started. So we're going to start by taking this particular end with the screw in it. You'll notice that the ball in the cable slots through, and we're going to screw it into the top of the trolley right here. So this is the trolley that moves up and down the upright, and you're going to screw this into the top. Screw it in just far enough for it to be secure. We're going to screw it down further at the end of the cable installation, so don't screw it all the way in, not even close. Maybe an inch if that, so just get it so that it's secure. Also, by leaving yourself a little bit of slack in the cable, it's going to be helpful to install the cable. The other thing you're going to want to do is, as you're screwing this in, hold the cable above the screw so that as you turn the screw, you're not twisting the cable. Again, this is an area where a lot of twists come in people's installations, is when they're turning this screw, they're twisting the cable. So hold the cable, screw the screw in an inch and a half, something like that, and we're ready to go. And then what you're going to do is you're going to grab the end of the cable and we're going to start running it through its route. The first few pulleys we're going to run this through up here on the top. So you're going to run this straight up, and there's a pulley mounted to the front corner here that we screwed on earlier. You're going to insert this up through the front part of the pulley and then pull this all the way up. And through each of these steps, we're going to pull the cable taut, and then we're going to make sure that there are no twists, because you'll already see, if you were here, you can see I've already got twists in my cable. You're just not going to be able to avoid it. So you can see right here where there's a twist. What we want to do is take our finger from the base here and just kind of squeeze all the way up, and that should move the twist up here so that we can get it out of the way. So again, that way there's no twists in this cable from here to here. Take your time on this part of the installation. Don't rush through it, because trust me, if you rush through it and you end up with twisted cables, it is a giant pain in the butt to fix, and you don't want to have to fix it. So we're going to run this up and over. Now this is going to go over this front pulley. It's going to go along the edge of this horizontal pulley here, over the third pulley behind it, and it's going to go down through one of the holes you put those grommets in earlier. So it's the grommeted hole closest to the front of the machine. So we're just going to find the end of this. This is where having a second person to keep tension on the cable is going to be helpful. Otherwise, what you're going to kind of have to do is figure out a way to just kind of hold it in place while you use your other hand to fork this through. So this is going to go straight down through, again, the closest grommeted hole to the front of the unit. You're going to put it straight through. Now, because of the way that it's situated, you're going to have a little bit of trouble finding the bottom hole. There's plenty of room in these holes though to kind of stick your finger in and guide it. So that's the next step. Once it's through the hole, you're going to pull it down. And again, you're going to find that your cable is twisted yet again. So once we get to the point where we're kind of short here and we're getting it taut around the pulleys, you're going to see again, I've got a twist here. So untwist it, and move that twist beyond the pulleys down to the part that's hanging straight down. Pull on this bottom pulley, and what you want is you want that cable to go straight up from the carriage over this pulley in front of the horizontal pulley, over the pulley behind it, and then straight down through the upright. And now we're going to run it for the first of 2 times through the floating set of pulleys I showed you earlier. So here we have the floating pulley. Now there is a top and a bottom. You'll see that there's 3 holes towards one end. That's the top. This pulley is going to end up floating kind of diagonally right over here. So the first run that we're going to do is you are going to run from that down at the top, and you're going to run through this top pulley along the inside, meaning that there's 2 pulleys here, so the one closest to the inside of the rack, and then back up, and we're going to go back up to through the top of the unit. So now I've got the pulley hung by the inside pulley, and the cable's running through that, and I'm going to take the end of the cable, I'm going to run it through this particular pulley that's hanging from the underside. Now you're going to go up through the back and then out through the side through here, and then you're going to pull that nice and tight, because this is going to go back through the floating pulley again. And again, make sure I've got no twists or turns in this cable all the way through here. Now this is going to come down. Now this is going to go through the other unused pulley. So it's the outside of this floating pulley here. So let's do a position check here, because this is an important part to get right. In fact, there's a picture in the assembly manual that will show you to double check this at the end, which you'll definitely want to do, but if you do it now, it's easy to fix. So what we've done is we've gone up from this trolley, up through outside, over, and then down through the grommeted hole closest to the front, straight down, down the front and up the back of the innermost pulley, up the back and down the front of this pulley up here, down the front and then up the back of the pulley that's outside here. And now we're going to run the cable through the other grommeted hole, up and then across the pulley that's right above there. Next, you're going to run the cable. There's 2 pulleys that line up evenly with each other. You'll see, and they cross the back corner. It's going to go up that grommeted hole, up the front of the pulley on the side cross member, across the top, and then across the top of the first pulley on top of the rear cross member. And then it's going to go down through a hole that's going to run inside of the guide rods here, because what we're going to do is we're going to run the cable down and then around the pulley on top of the weights and then back up. Here you're going to want to give yourself some slack. So you want to pull this so that the floating pulley kind of goes up and you've got plenty of length here. And now this is going to go down the left side. I'm on the left side of the unit. It's going to go down the outside of the pulley on top of the weights and then back up through the hole on the right hand side. So there's 2 holes above this. You just went down through one, you're going to go down and around and then up through the other one. Coming inside the rack, you can see that my cable is run down the outside here, and then I'm going to run it back up the inside through this hole that goes up to the top. So I'm going to run it over this pulley right here, but we're going to get it through the hole first. And as you're running the cable, it's a good idea to pull it through and taut, and on every step, double check to make sure that there's no twisting, and then always work so that the back part of the cable is taut. That's why I was saying 2 people helps, because you can have one person just keep tension on the cable while you're fiddling with fishing stuff. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and over this particular pulley, and then I'm going to feed it behind this horizontal pulley here. So I've got it up over this pulley here and then around the back of this horizontal pulley here, and it's going to go out the front and then through a pulley we're about to install. So we've run the cable through that horizontal pulley, and now it's going to come out this center here. So it's going to go into this housing for the pulley that we're about to install. And then if you pull on this enough, it'll give you enough slack to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this pulley, thread the cable through it, push it up into the housing so that it's holding everything in one spot. Take your bolt that we talked about earlier and then put a washer on it. Then slide it through the outside. All of the pulley installations are going to be the same. It's going to be a bolt with a washer and then a washer and a nut on the other side. So we're going to take the washer and the nut and put that on and tighten that down. So now we're going to take the ball and the U-clip and put it back on the end of the cable. So basically all you do is you unscrew this little post from the U-clip. You're going to put the ball onto the end of the cable. And then you're going to take the U-clip and slide that little end in the opening and slide it forward like that. And then screw this little guy back in and away you go. One last check before we move on to the next step. You're going to want to run through all the cables and make sure that the cable is run through the groove in every pulley. It's real easy to have the cable actually accidentally run beside, and if you give a good hard pull with the cable beside it, it's going to wedge in there and be kind of hard to get out. So make sure that your cable is running through the groove in every single pulley. Once you've made sure that that's the case, come on over here and pull on your floating pulley to snug that up, and that makes you ready for the bottom cable assembly. Putting on the lower cable assembly, you're going to need a few things that the manual forgets to tell you that you're going to need. So it tells you you only need one of these pulleys. You're actually going to need 4 of these pulleys. So be ready to install 4 pulleys as we go through each step. You're going to need 4 bolts. You're going to need 3 M10 by 45 and 1 M10 by 50. That should be all of those bolts that you have left. You're going to need some washers. You're going to need some nuts. And we're going to start right here in the front. But before we do, just like we did on the last installation for the upper cable, you're going to remove the removable ball off of the end of this and set it aside for later, because again, that's the end that you're going to be snaking through all of the pulleys and things, and the ball makes it so you can't do that. Once you've got that ball off the end, we're actually going to start with this other ball, which doesn't come off. And we're going to take one of the pulleys and we're going to assemble the pulley inside here. Now, when we put it inside here, what you may end up needing to do is, this has already got the top pulley assembled, and what you may find is that you're going to have a hard time getting the bottom pulley up in there because it's been tightened down. So you may find you might have to loosen this top bolt a little bit, but what we're going to do is we're going to take an M10 by 45, and you're going to take the bolt with a washer, put it through the pulley, and then washer and nut, and in between these 2 pulleys, you're going to have this end right here. Once you've got both pulleys in, make sure you tighten both of them down, and basically what you've done is you've trapped this ball end through there. Now we're going to start running the cable by going down to the bottom of the machine. We're going to run the cable straight down from the ball that's captured in the carriage above, and we're going to go down to the bracket we installed in the footer. Now there's no pulley in this yet. You're going to want to put the cable through here first. So go ahead and run the cable into this and then out the back of it. So here's where I'll remind you for the 100th time to make sure that there's no twists in the cable as it goes down along the way. So from the top up here down to here, make sure there's no twists. Once we've run it through the bracket, you're going to take the pulley and you're going to insert it down inside. And this is the one spot we're going to use the 50mm bolt. It's the longer of the 4 bolts you grabbed for this step. This is where that longer one's going to go. Put a washer on it, put it through the pulley, put a washer and a nut on the other side, and tighten that down. Once we've got this pulley secured, we're going to run this pulley along. There's a horizontal pulley down here at the bottom. You're going to run along the edge and then under the first vertical pulley, and then up through the grommeted hole that's closest to the front, because it's going to go along the side, underneath this first pulley, and then straight up through this hole, and then up to that floating pulley we installed earlier. So we're over here with the floating pulley, but I want to show you a super secret trick to help make this install go easier. If you find yourself needing more slack, or you need this in a different position, because this is going to be kind of right here, what you can do is take the weight stack pin out of your weight stack and then lift the top weight, and you'll notice that this is going down. To hold this up in that position, you can then take your weight stack pin and then put it back through the next plate down and through one of the holes, and that will hold this top plate up and then put this at a lower height. So if this helps you or it gives you more slack in the cable, which we'll need a little bit later, this is a good way to get more slack instead of fighting with the cable that's super taut. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that cable that is coming down up from down there. So just like running the cables through the top, it's really important that we get these in the right order, otherwise this thing is going to bind up on you. So we're going to take the cable end and we're going to run it up the front side. This is the front of the rack. We're going to run it up the front side of the innermost pulley, the one closest to me. I'm standing inside the rack, and then back down. Now we're going to take the cable that's running up from that floating pulley and we're going to bring it down to this one single pulley that's on the bottom cross member here. We're going to run it from the back out the side to the front. The cable is going to come now up, and it's going to go up the front of the outermost pulley. So again, this is the front of the rack, up into the front of the pulley that's on the outside of the rack, and it's going to run over that pulley and then straight back down through the grommeted hole next to the bottom pulley down there. Before we jump down low, this is a great time and place to check for kinks in your cable. If you kind of just let this sit loose, then the cable won't, it doesn't have a weight on the end of it, so it won't pull. You'll see in these cables as they're a little bit loose if any of them are twisted. This is a great chance for you to fix that before we move on, because once we run this down through the bottom and then back over out to the pull point down here, you're not going to be able to fix those twists anymore. So check that just by leaving it loose, and then I'll meet you back down below. So I've got the cable end coming down from the floating pulley above, and what I'm going to do is there's a grommeted hole behind this towards the back of this single pulley it's on the top of this cross member here. So I'm going to run it straight through that grommeted hole down underneath, and you're going to see there's a pulley towards the back. There's two pulleys underneath here. We're going to run it towards the front of the rear one, and then over, and then right here where this bracket is, we're going to put in another pulley to hold the cable. Now that I've got the cable down through the grommeted holes and around this bottom pulley, this is a good time to double check. This particular pulley, it's easy to get this wire or the cable between the pulley and the housing, and you want it in the groove of the pulley. Once you know it's there, you're going to take this last pulley and you're going to put the cable in the groove, and then you're going to push that back into this bracket right here. You're then going to take one of the M10x45s with a washer. You don't need any nuts on this because it's actually permanently welded to the bottom of this particular bracket. Just go ahead and seat it through the top and then screw that down tight right there. We are on to our last little bit, and if you haven't yet raised the stack up like you see over here and inserted the pin to give yourself more slack, this is where you're going to want to do that. This is the step that really is beneficial too. So we've got the cable run through the pulley we just installed. We're now going to run it straight over and under this particular cable right here, and then we're going to run it up and through, and we're going to install another pulley in the bottom here. And this is the same as the one up there. You may need to loosen these bolts right here to allow this to expand to accept this cable, but we're going to run it up through the side here, under the bottom, up the middle, through the front, so that you're going to have the cable end kind of hanging out from the front. As we're running the cable through this bottom pulley here, the very first step we did in the whole assembly was we put a bracket on the back of this and said to hand tighten these nuts, and this is exactly why we said to hand tighten these nuts. This pulley you're going to be able to move out of the way so that you can slide the cable into the groove. If you have tightened it all the way, you're not going to be able to do that. Once you've got all the pulleys tightened in, take the end of your cable, put the ball on it, slide the little U-clip back on, and then reinsert this little guy right here. And once you've done that, you're going to be able to lower this weight stack. And you'll notice that that pulls it almost tight. Now we're going to head back upstairs and tighten one bolt so that your cable tightness is the correct way, and we'll get on to the next step. Coming back up top, we're now going to make sure that the cable has no slack in it, that it's nice and taut through the whole system. And we're going to do that with this bolt right here. Remember when I said when we first put this in, don't put it in very far. Now we're going to screw it in as far as we can. So there's a little bit of a trick to this. You're going to pull on this cable, and what you're going to see is that it's going to tighten up. This floating pulley is going to come up a little bit. I don't know if you can see that here in the picture, but that's going to take the slack out of that. It's going to take the slack out of the whole system. So you're going to see there's a little bit of slack here. You're going to hold on to that slack, and then you're going to start screwing this screw in. And it's going to be probably a little bit there. This is also, as I'm doing this is also what's going to happen. As you first use your system, your cable is going to stretch a little bit over time, and you're going to notice it developing some slack. This is the adjustment bolt you use to take the slack out. So what I'm doing is now I'm tightening it down, and I'm not tightening it to the point where it's twisting the cable. Again, I'm holding this not only to hold the tautness, but also to keep the cable from twisting as I turn the screw. But I'm going to take this all the way down as far as it needs to, so that once you're to the right spot, you're going to spin this nut here. Now, if this nut is too low to allow you to go, so you're going to loosen that a little bit. But once you're done, you're going to tighten that nut down, and that's going to keep this whole assembly from changing over time. And that will give you a nice tight cable pull with your ends nice and snug up into their pull points. So that is the cable system. This next step's pretty easy, so I'm not going to walk you through step by step, but I'm going to refer you to your manual and steps. In mine is 39 and 40, but basically it's where they show you there are these little security screws or retainer bolts. They're going to go in each of the little pulley housings to keep the cable from slipping out, and it's more of a security and a safety thing. This is a step that a lot of people tend to skip. I've helped a lot of people assemble stuff like this, and they tend to look at things like this and go, I don't really need to do that. Definitely make sure and install these. What happens over time is as you're winging these weights around and the cable's moving, sometimes it does develop some slack if there's momentum in the weight stack, and it can jump outside of the thing, and then that can actually damage the cable, damage the weight stack, cause injury. It's an issue. So make sure that you take the time to put these in. There's quite a few of them. I think there's like 12 of the smaller ones and 4 or 5 of the bigger ones. But make sure you put all of those in before you move to the next step. So now we're going to come on down inside and we're going to install the shrouds around the weight stacks. Now a couple of tips for you with this. Number one, if you're going to put the decals on, I would put them on now before you put on the shrouds. This will allow you to have room for your hands while you center the stickers on the weight stacks. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. Not impossible, but a little more difficult if you do it with the shrouds on. Secondly, the shrouds, while I'm going to put them on as part of this install video, I don't know that they're 100% necessary. Shrouds serve two purposes. Number one is aesthetic. I think they definitely look nice. The second one is safety. If you've got kids or pets that are in your gym, they can definitely get their fingers pinched between these weight plates, and what these shrouds do is it doesn't prevent that 100%, but it definitely makes it less likely that if you've got a cat or if you've got a kid or something like that, they don't get their fingers pinched because they won't be able to get in there past the shroud. So that's the two reasons. With the wall mount Aries, I don't know that the rear shrouds are going to help anything. Again, I'm going to put them on as part of this install video, but this is going to be something that's up to you. I'm guessing if you called rep, just legally they would tell you to put the shrouds on just for safety purposes, but for aesthetic purposes, I don't know that you're going to see the shrouds behind. But anyway, since we're going to put the shrouds on, there is a left and a right like there's been on most of the rest of the unit. So what you're going to do is there are two types. You're going to see one with a little notch in the bottom here. And then these are going to be the front shrouds. These I'm putting on the ones on the side first. The center one we'll put on the next step. And then there are some with no notch in the bottom, and those go in the rear. There are little cutouts or little bump outs here that will seat into the holes in the rack. And when you put these on, you're going to put them up against the upright, and that's going to fit real nicely. You're going to see exactly where they fit. You're going to put them as far down as they go, and you're going to put one bolt in the bottom and one bolt in the top, and it's the typical rack bolts that you've used for everything else. So let me get these side ones on both sides, and then we'll come back and do the center. If you're going to put the center shroud on, there's a couple of things that are going to help you out here. Number one, you need to put the back and the front, because the top parts actually connect to each other, and there's these spacers that go between, so they don't actually mount to anything. So if you're going to just put on the front, it won't have anything to mount to. So you got to either put on both or none. If you're going to put them both on, if you remember, the very first step of the entire installation was putting on a bracket on the back of this bottom cross member here, and we just hand tightened it. It's very important that it is just hand tightened. If it's tightened all the way down, you're not going to be able to do this step. So what's going to happen is you're going to take this rear shroud and you're going to slide it down, and you'll feel it kind of slide in and lock in between the bracket and the bottom cross member. On that bracket are two welded nuts that the two bolts that go through the bottom are going to screw into. Now in your instructions, they aren't for the Aries instructions, aren't for the wall mounted. So the wall mounted Aries actually has that bracket, whereas the instructions are going to show you putting nuts down there. You're not going to do that. You don't need to put any just freestanding nuts on the back of these bolts at the bottom, because that bracket has those on there. The issue is that to get this lined up with these holes here and the threaded inserts in the bracket so that you can slide the bolts through once we put the front shroud in place, it's a little bit tricky. So I would definitely recommend that you get yourself a flashlight of some type and really get down there, and you can see through these holes, and you'll see when everything is lined up. You'll be able to see through the front hole, through the rear hole, through the hole in the rear shroud, and then you'll see the threaded nut that's back there. If you can't see straight through, then this bolt's never going to fit through, and no amount of pushing or hammering or anything like that's going to make it work. So the first step to this is, like I said, to make sure that bottom bracket is loose. Slide this down in, and then what we're going to do next is we're going to take this front shroud and we're going to put it right up over the front, line those holes up, and then run these bolts through into those rear threaded screws. You're going to tighten them down, and then the bolts that are hand cranked or hand tightened that we put on for that bracket up front. You can then reach down. They give you this wrench right here, so this should be long enough for you to kind of get down behind and actually just cap it over the back, and then take your socket wrench or your other wrench and then tighten the other bolts down. These are the ones through the pulleys down here. So this is a little bit of a tricky step. I've been trying to get this done for like the last 20-25 minutes, so it may take a couple minutes, but if you're going to put on these center shrouds, that's what you're going to do. Then on the top portion, you're going to put these spacers through there and then run nuts and bolts through and then tighten everything down, and then your shroud should be on. Next, we're going to come up top here and we're going to put on these holders for the lat pull down bar. Basically, you're going to take the side with the hole in it, and it's going to be oriented like this, and it's going to hang off of the front. You're going to want to put these through the 5th hole in from each side. So you can see I put this one in on this side. It's going to end up just on either side of the rep logo. This one is going to end up going right about here, and you'll bolt those in with your normal big bolts that you bolted the rest of the rack through, and then you'll have a place to hang your lat pull down bar. And we are down to our last step of assembling the Aries wall mount, and after this you'll just go ahead and attach your accessories and figure out how you're going to put everything on your pegboards and things like that. But this is the last assembly step, and that is to put these, I don't know if I call them shrouds or just kind of trim pieces in the bottom. You're going to get 4 of them. You're going to get 2 with the rep logo on them, and you're going to get 2 that don't have a rep logo on them. There is, as with everything else, a right and a left. Pretty easy to figure out. There are these cutouts in the top here that are going to go around this bolt right here. So all you're going to do is you're going to seat these. They only fit one way. You're going to seat them on each side. One on the outside, one on the inside. And then the only kind of tip I have for you on these is you're going to want to take your bolts and put them in from the outside in. The reason for that is if you have your shroud on here, you're not going to be able to get a wrench around the bolt head, or not be able to get the bolt head in. You're going to want the bolt head to come straight through and then screw into the nut. So that's all I've got for you for this. If you have any questions on assembly or use of the Aries, go ahead and put them down in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them for you. I'm going to have this in my garage for quite a while. I'm happy to help you out in getting this thing up and going. Also, keep an eye out for a review, which I will post. I should post an initial review fairly soon, just my overall impressions of this. And then also I'll post updated reviews as I work on this and train on this and figure out little tips and hacks and things for you to use. So if you've watched all the way to the end, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, all that kind of fun stuff that makes it possible for me to do long, old videos like this. Rep didn't pay me to do this. I just wanted to make sure that you could get this thing together without as many Band-Aids as I needed. So with that said, until the next video, I'm Tim with GymCrafter.